It has been less than a year since our former finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, resigned. This, of course, after she completely blew past what was supposed to be the cap on our national deficit, $40 billion. This completely imploded Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party and caused the Canadian public to not trust these people anymore. And then, this happened. Thanks to Donald Trump's tariffs and the 51st state rhetoric, the Liberal Party was able to launch a very successful propaganda campaign and convince Canadians that the failures of the last decade were due to Donald Trump. Just look at where we were 10 years ago. On September 14th, 2015, $1.9 billion surplus pushes economy back to the top of the election agenda. And now, 10 years later, Carney finally releases his budget, and it is not looking good. A $78.3 billion deficit. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few days if this disastrous budget is going to trigger an election, but one thing is for certain. This is going to get ugly, and either way, Canadians are going to feel a lot of pain before things get better. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. And after you've done that, smash the like button and leave me a comment down below, because I want to know if you're getting concerned yet, or are you just going to keep calm and Carney on? The Canadian government operates sort of like an abusive, gaslighting spouse. Imagine, if you will, you go to use your credit card and you discover that it's been maxed out. So you go to the bank, you refinance, you get a higher credit limit, and then you check your next statement and you realize that there's been a lot of purchases for online casinos. But then you're told to relax, because this isn't spending, this is investing. Generational investments. That's the line we've heard from Carney over and over again, ad nauseum, for the past few weeks. Now, gov.exe is corrupt has a great take on this. Breaking. Francis Philippe Champagne says it's not the time for balanced budgets and has tabled a budget that comes with a $78 billion deficit. This is not generational investment. It's generational debt. Carney's budget makes Trudeau look fiscally responsible.
The budget I present today comes at a time of profound change, a time to build. The world is undergoing a series of fundamental shifts at a speed, scale, and scope not seen since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And through it all, the Canadian economy has held steady. Forecasters now expect modest GDP growth of just above 1% in 2025. Trading partner fundamentally reshapes all of its trading relationship. There are two responses, Mr. Speaker. You can slash the deficit, hope for the best, wait for the uncertainty to unexpectedly disappear, and see if it trickles down, ever comes. That approach to balance the budget this year would have to eliminate vital social programs and all the capital investments needed for Canada's future. We chose a different path, Mr. Speaker, a path that believes in Canada, a path that invests in our country's future, a path that reinforces Canadian values, a path that makes us less resilient on our trading partner, a path that...
Now, was that a Freudian slip? I know English isn't his first language, but he did say it will make us less resilient on our trading partner. I'm sure he meant to say reliant, but yeah, he accidentally told the truth there. This absolutely will make us less resilient.
That allows us to be master in our own house, Mr. Speaker. We chose Canada. Canada also has the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And the federal debt to GDP ratio will remain stable over the budget horizon. We also have one of the lowest deficits in the G7 and one of the strongest fiscal positions in the world. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have a strong fiscal position, a strong base to work for, a strong base to invest, Mr. Speaker. And we must use this fiscal power to make generational investment because we believe in Canada. With this plan, in 5 years, we will enable $1 trillion in total investment in this country, Mr. Speaker. Enable $1 trillion of investment.
So he's claiming that this rampant government overspending, the likes of which we have never seen before in this country, is somehow going to drive investors towards Canada. When the reality is, everybody knows this, we've seen it in the news lately, companies are leaving this place in droves. We are not exactly making it a hospitable environment to do business. And CBC Watcher has a good take on this as well. Carney's new emission reduction plan looks like a shell game. Knock off the emissions cap, but increase costs and penalties elsewhere. Still many hoops, lots of uncertainty, driving away investment dollars. Now here's CBC News talking about this.
To talk, she's willing to negotiate further. Let's just go back, David, through what is, I want to come to the infrastructure moment, but just in terms of what is there for climate and what would be, I guess, the biggest problem for Liz May would be probably ending the oil and gas emissions cap. But to your point, they are moving to strengthen the industrial carbon pricing system. So
There it is. She just said it. And we've been told for months that Pierre Poilievre's rhetoric about how the carbon tax is not gone because they've kept the industrial carbon tax is just a conspiracy. Well, now it's been admitted.
I'm speculating as to what would upset her there the most, but they're putting all their eggs, if it were, into industrial carbon pricing rather than the hard cap, which had been causing problems for so many people in Alberta.
So it's an if-then scenario. Right. If the country can agree on develop a post-2030 carbon pricing trajectory, we can get to a point where you don't need the emissions cap. And this is something even champions of emissions reductions have said to the government, not to do an emissions cap because you're bringing regulation into what they want as a pricing and market-driven solution. So essentially, the plan is the government's going to sit down with the provincial and territorial governments and setting up a multi-decade industrial carbon price trajectory. Long-term certainty heading towards a net zero target by 2050. This is what all at the Conference of Partners, COP, they agreed to, is to get to a net zero economy by 2050.
But this only happens, they'll only get rid of the cap if this happens.
So this needs to happen. They need to agree to a stronger benchmark and backstop in that if Ontario falls below it, the government moves immediately, puts it in and lets everybody know, nope, we're coming in, we've all agreed to this, let's go.
Okay.
If they agree to that, if they agree to movement on methane emissions, movement on the clean electricity regulations, because there's a series of tax credits that were announced in earlier budgets that are now implemented in this one that will give you tax write-offs for investing in clean electricity sources, moving away from fossil fuels. So if you can do the methane, if you can do the electricity, if you can agree to an industrial carbon price on a long-term horizon to give certainty, then you can get to the oil and gas emissions cap. And it says effective carbon markets, enhance oil and gas methane regulations, and the deployment at scale of technologies such as carbon capture and storage would create the circumstances whereby the oil and gas emissions cap would no longer be required. So the Pathways Carbon Capture Project is a big thing. And people like Daniel Smith and Scott Moe and Tony Wakeham, the new Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, the three main oil-producing provinces, agreeing to an industrial carbon price with a 2050 horizon to get to net zero, that can make the oil and gas emissions cap go away.
Yep.
You'd still pay for your pollution in that sector, but you don't have to hit a certain emissions thing. And this goes back to what the Prime Minister's been saying. I'm interested in results, not necessarily specific policy instruments. And I think this has been part of the overtures to Daniel Smith in the private conversations that has her more positive lately.
So Liz May not in favor of what she sees there when it comes.
That's right, guys. Elizabeth May. Now, I don't spend a lot of time talking about the Green Party on this show because they are highly irrelevant, to say the least. But let's not forget, in this scenario, they are extremely relevant because they have one seat, and the Liberal Party only needs 2 votes to get this abomination passed.
Certainly, I want to make it clear that I am specifically asking the Prime Minister to think about the fact that he's not the CEO of a company called Canada. He's the Prime Minister of this country with a minority government. Now is the time to reach out to those of us in opposition parties who could vote for the budget if in negotiations over the next few days we see changes. That's a possibility. It's a real possibility. The vote will be very tight. When we crunch the numbers, it's too close for comfort. And this is the time for a Prime Minister, and I really ask him personally to meet, to sit down and talk and find the changes that could be made to where we could cast our one vote in favor of the budget. but that moment is not now.
So essentially, Elizabeth May is saying that she won't support this budget because it doesn't go far enough in driving investment away from this country. And the NDP are in a very similar situation. Don Davies says that the NDP may consider not voting in favor or abstaining entirely.
Well, today we have the first budget at the federal level in 18 months, and I want to contextualize it a little bit. Canadians are facing serious economic pressures from coast to coast to coast. We have skyrocketing prices in groceries and rent, and housing as an ownership proposition is simply out of the question for too many people. We have unemployment at 10-year highs, particularly hard for young people, where 1 in 6 young people is out of work, and many more than that are underemployed. Economic growth is weak.
Economic growth is weak. Now, even he will admit this, yet the Liberals are trying to paint this rosy picture that Canada is doing just fine.
And of course, we face serious problems from south of the border. So it is in that context that we're evaluating this budget today. I can tell you that New Democrats are going to take the time to study this budget. We're going to consult with stakeholders. We're going to talk to Canadians, particularly working Canadians, and review this budget to see if this budget passes our lens of whether it works for working Canadians.
Now, like I said, it remains to be seen if the NDP, Bloc, and the Greens are going to support this budget. But as expected, Pierre Poilievre came out today and said the Conservatives will not be supporting it. All Conservatives except for Chris d'Entremont, who has just crossed the floor to the Liberal Party. This is crazy, guys. Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont resigns from Conservative caucus to join the Liberals. So it would be bad enough if this budget passed on its own, but if 2 more MPs decide to follow his example and cross the floor, this would give the Liberals a majority, and that would sure to cripple Canadians with unmanageable debt for generations to come. Now here's Pierre Poilievre announcing that the Conservatives will in no way, shape, or form support this budget.
Today, the Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else that Canadians buy. And the Prime Minister has broken every single promise he made just 7 short months ago. He promised a $62 billion deficit. He delivered nearly an $80 billion deficit, $16 billion bigger than he promised and twice the size that his predecessor left behind. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio. He raised it, and inflation along with it. He promised to spend less. He's spending $90 billion more, costing $5,400 per family in Canada. And that $90 billion, to the Prime Minister's heckles, is above and beyond the promised $16 billion that he says he will one day find. And if he doesn't find them, it will be over $100 billion in brand new spending to respond to the Prime Minister's heckles, Mr. Speaker. He also promised that he would invest more. His own budget document lays out a graph showing that every quarter of this year will see private sector business investment collapse. This costly budget forces Canadians to spend more on debt interest than on health care transfers. More than the government collects in GST. That means every dollar the Canadians pay in GST will go to bankers and bondholders instead of to doctors and nurses, all while he raises the industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and fertilizer and therefore food, on steel, concrete, and other industrial projects needed to build homes, a big tax increases on homes and food. Mr. Speaker, instead we will, our party wanted an affordable budget for an affordable life. And on behalf of all the Canadians who can no longer afford to eat, heat, or house themselves because of Liberal inflation, we Conservatives cannot support this costly Liberal budget.
Now, I want you to forget about your political affiliations for just a second. It doesn't matter if you're Liberal, Conservative, left or right, whatever. What he just said there and the statistics he just broke down should absolutely shake every Canadian to their core. We are going to be paying more on interest on the national debt than we are on healthcare transfer payments. And I want to know in the comments, who exactly can afford $5,400 a year just to pay off the interest on our national debt. But that about does it for my coverage of the budget today. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so I can bring you the latest. Smash the like button and let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Johnny from Nova Scotia says thank you. Hey, Johnny from Nouvelle-Écosse, il dit merci, thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah, come on.